You got anything to say before I start?
No, he's the children's pastor.
Are we recording yet, Carrie? Oh.
Christy, I was told to use I feel when you statements.
I think, I feel, I mean. He knows what it is.
Okay. We're already recording, so the reason that I've got you packed in like sardines is because we are recording this for anyone who isn't able to be here today, and so I can't see very well with the spotlight in my face, and so I want to be able to interact with you guys. But we're going to go ahead and get started. So let me just tell you a little bit about who I am and who Carrie is, in case you all don't know me, because I don't know everybody in here. So I am the pastor of family care and counseling. I'm Dr. Amy Moore. I have a PhD in psychology and a master's in early childhood education, and I've been training teachers and parents in various settings since 1996. I'm bivocational, so I am a brain scientist in my other world. And so a lot of what I'm going to talk to you today is based on brain science and brain research and how that informs how we interact with kids. And then Carrie Sweetland, as Mike said, is the assistant director and lead teacher for our weekday preschool program, New Covenant Academy, and she's a child development associate, which is a national credential. And she's going to be your go-to for all things early childhood. So that would be toddlers through third grade. But she's a superstar with kids, and we're going to have her come up a third of the way through this presentation to help me answer some of the questions that you all have submitted. All right, so what can you expect for the next hour and a half? Well, it's going to be broken up into three parts. The first part is called the 4 C's of classroom success. That's going to last about 30 minutes. The second part is called the top 10 challenges and their solutions, and that's based on what you all submitted or what some of you submitted in response to Christy's inquiry about the challenges that you're having in the classrooms. That'll last about 30 minutes, and then we'll save the last 30 minutes for Q&A. So anything that I don't cover and that Carrie doesn't cover, you are welcome to throw at us in that last 30 minutes. Okay, part one. Part one are the 4 C's of classroom success in children's ministry. I've got a C theme going here. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is that challenging behavior is communication. Then we're going to talk about the importance of connection. Then how to help children co-regulate emotions. And finally, the difference between classroom management and positive guidance and what that looks like for you guys. So, number one, first C, challenging behavior equals communication. So every single time you see a challenging behavior in the classroom, it is a child's way of communicating something to you. And so I really love this quote. This is a quote from Ross Greene. He's a psychiatrist who specializes in helping parents and teachers deal with children who have explosive behaviors. In fact, he wrote a book called The Explosive Child. And so this quote says, challenging behavior is just a signal, the fever, the means by which the kid is communicating that he or she is having difficulty meeting an expectation. So just as you know when children get sick and they run a fever, that fever is not the sickness. The fever is the signal that tells you this child is sick. And so challenging behavior is the signal that's telling us this child has some sort of unmet need or doesn't have the skills to tell us what they need or something else is going on. So if we think of challenging behavior, what's going on with my slides, Carrie?
I don't know.
Looks like the slides aren't even up.
Something happened. Say again?
She's wondering if it's ProPresenter.
No, it's in Keynote. Oh, there's one. There we go. Okay, so if we think of challenging behavior like an iceberg, so what you're seeing in the classroom is the part of the iceberg that's above the waterline. So you're seeing hitting or kicking or fighting or complaining or throwing or tantrums or meltdowns. That's what you see above the waterline, that part of the iceberg. What you're not seeing is the part of the iceberg that's under the waterline, and that's what's going on inside that child. So their inability to regulate their emotions, they're overwhelmed, stressed, they're sleep deprived, they're confused, they don't feel like they have any control, they're experiencing fear, anxiety, they don't feel connected, they have some sort of unmet sensory need. For example, if you have kids or you've ever been a kid, think about how chaotic getting ready to leave for church on Sunday mornings can be and what that looks like with mom and or dad yelling, we have to go, we have to go, we have to go, we have to go. And by the time you get into the car, one child is crying, another one is mad, you're dragging the other one by the hair into the car, everybody's yelling, Jeff is cursing at them. Right? And so that child is now completely dysregulated, right? Completely dysregulated. And what happens when a child is upset is that the emotion center of their brain, it's called the amygdala, hijacks the reasoning portion of their brain, the prefrontal cortex. It's called an amygdala hijack. They are now incapable of calming down all by themselves. Okay, so they're in this fight, flight, or freeze state. And that's how you get them. They walk into your classroom having just had the Sunday morning meltdown. Has anybody never encountered the Sunday morning meltdown? Okay, not even when you were a child?
I didn't go to church.
Okay. Well, trust me, the Sunday morning meltdown is really common. So just know, and then half the kids, what do they bring into the room? A donut, right? So let's just throw some fuel on the fire with some sugar, right? Okay.
Amy, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Can you define dysregulation for people maybe who have never heard?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm actually going to show a little bit more about dysregulation in just a minute. So if we hold on to that question, I will get to that. Okay. So then I want to give you another example. So when you get onto a roller coaster and that safety bar comes down, what's the first thing you do? Yeah, you check that safety bar. What are you checking for? And if it's locked, what does that do for you? Right. It makes you safe. It makes you feel completely secure. So that feeling of safety and security is something that you have to work at before a child trusts you. And unfortunately, in a children's ministry setting with rotating teachers, they're only seeing you once or twice a month. And so that's a super big challenge for you to be able to convince a child that being in your presence in your classroom gives them a sense of safety and security. Hey, when you check that safety bar on the roller coaster, you're not checking it to see how you can jump out. You're not checking it to see if you can hurt your seatmate with it, right? It's all about you needing to feel that sense of safety before that ride starts. And so when that dysregulated child, that child who's just had the Sunday morning meltdown, walks into your classroom, they are going to test to see if that is a safe and secure environment for them. And that's just not physical safety, that's emotional safety too. Am I going to get yelled at by my teacher because dad just yelled at me, right? Is this teacher going to love me unconditionally no matter what I say or do? That's what they're checking for. So, let's go back to the iceberg. If they're stressed, worried, anxious, hungry, exhausted, coming off of that Sunday morning meltdown, that's what's happening underneath when you see those challenging behaviors. And so my reasoning for sharing that with you is to build a sense of empathy, to know that what you're seeing is not intentional towards you. Those challenging behaviors are not personal. They are not against you. They may look like it, but there's some unmet need or something that's not regulated inside that child that is causing that behavior. So your job then becomes, oh, so sorry. Your job becomes to ask yourself the question, what is this challenging behavior communicating to me, and how can I help? How can I help? All right, so the second C for success is connection. And so that is one way that we can make this a little bit better, is to build connections. And why are they important? So connection is more important than curriculum. It's more important than compliance, and it needs to come before correction. So K through 12 research tells us that positive teacher-child relationships improve student behavior, improve motivation for learning, improve engagement in learning, and improve learning outcomes altogether. And so none of that, motivation, engagement, appropriate behavior, and learning, can happen unless that child feels connected. Connection is also the #1 buffer against mental health crisis. And so this is even more critically important as those children enter adolescence, because they're looking for that connection. And that's when we start seeing mental health issues. So just know, and the reason I'm struggling here is because I'm trying to forward the slides with my phone while looking at the computer at the same time. So I apologize. Okay, so this was one research project that showed middle school students who reported high levels of developmental relationships with their teachers were 8 times more likely to stick with challenging tasks, enjoy working hard, and know it's okay to make mistakes when they're learning, compared to students who didn't have strong relationships with their teachers. And then finally, there's an Israeli child psychologist, Dr. Haim Janot, who said this absolutely heartbreaking quote: "I've come to the frightening conclusion that I'm the decisive element. It is my personal approach that creates the climate. It is my daily mood that makes the weather. I possess tremendous power to make life miserable or joyous. I can be a tool of torture or an instrument of inspiration. I can humiliate or humor, hurt or heal. In all situations, it's my response that decides whether a crisis is escalated or de-escalated, and a person is humanized or dehumanized. If we treat people as they are, we make them worse. If we treat people as they are, we make them worse. If we treat people as they ought to be, we help them become what they're capable of becoming." And so he was a pioneer in helping teachers understand their role and the importance of those relationships in working with kids. Okay. #3, the third C in classroom success, is co-regulating emotions. Okay, what does that mean? So emotions are contagious. Brain science explains that through mirror neurons. When you yawn, the person you're talking to will yawn too. That's a mirror neuron. It's a mirror, like you look into a mirror. And so we have these mirror neurons in our brains that make us mimic the person that we're interacting with. And so when I exhibit an emotion, positive or negative, it's very easy for you to catch that same emotion. So let me give you an example. Let's say your child falls down on the playground. And you come running, right? He falls, he gets up, he looks a little stunned, he's looking around for mom or dad. Mom comes running, screaming, yelling, "Oh no, you're hurt, you fell down, you poor baby." What does that child do? bursts into tears. Absolutely, because mom has just said, this is a crisis. Oh my goodness, this is an emergency. I'm upset. So now the child's mirror neurons initiate the same emotion. What if a child falls down running on the playground and mom just comes over, brushes you off, and goes, it's okay, have fun?
Still cries.
Validating him. If they're hurt, they'll cry in pain. But if they just fell down but are not actually hurt, right, they're looking for mom to say, it's okay. Say again? Yes, exactly. Okay, so that's how mirror neurons work. And here's another example, just in pictures, right, of this big, joyous smile that is contagious. So how do emotions spread? So emotions can spread from our body language, the way we behave, the facial expressions we make, the words we speak, and how we speak them, right? The tone of our voice, the mood that is portrayed in our voice. These are all the ways that we can spread our emotions. So infants are not born with the ability to regulate or control their emotions. Being able to regulate your emotions occurs throughout childhood into adulthood with the help of a caregiver, right? Your parent, your teacher. And so in this graph, you can see in the very beginning, in infancy and toddlerhood, the adult is doing most of that regulating for you. And then as you age, adults need to regulate you less and less and less, right? Because you learn how to manage your emotions, and that's what regulate means, just to manage your emotions. And so parents and teachers both contribute to this, and it's unrealistic to think that a child that you're working with has full capacity to manage their own emotions without our help. So if they're upset, they need us to come alongside them and help regulate those emotions. And how do we do that? Well, if emotions are contagious, yes, we have to maintain calm, positive emotions, even in the midst of them being upset. So I love this next visual. So in their storm, when it meets our calm, that's co-regulation. It's super hard. It's super hard for us to take a deep breath and stay calm when we want to react, right? We want to react when there's this meltdown happening, when inappropriate behaviors are happening. It's our instinct to get upset about them and stop them. But if we can remain calm, we'll diffuse the situation faster. Okay, here are 5 ways to help children co-regulate. When something is happening that we want to diffuse, we need to use a warm, soothing tone of voice. We need to acknowledge their emotions, right? Wow, I can see you're upset right now. We can just provide supportive silence. Sometimes when they're caught in that fight, flight, or freeze state, talking to them, reasoning with them, that's not gonna happen, right? But our presence alone can be the greatest gift we can give to them to help calm. We can invite them to problem solve once they've calmed down or if they're not fully escalated yet. Or we can simply ask, what would be helpful to you right now? How can I help? And they may or may not be able to communicate that need, but it shows that we care. It shows that even in the midst of their storm, we're going to be the calm presence that's there to love them anyway. And so here's an illustration of what that looks like. It's hard, though. It's hard to come alongside a fire and be calm. It's hard.
Question, is this, I was never clear, I mean, I've tried this with some of the issues that I've experienced, and that child does not want to be comforted.
Yep, and that will happen sometimes. Some children respond to that, others do not, but you can still stay close. Your presence will still be comforting, right? And you need to stay close to the fire to make sure the fire doesn't spread, right? So you might not say anything or do anything, but just be present. And we're going to talk about proximity control here in a few minutes too.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, and the fourth C is that classroom management is actually positive guidance of behaviors, right? So we're not actually managing the classroom. We're creating guidance to help children regulate emotions and use appropriate behaviors. So I want to, whoops, sorry. Yes? No? There we go. I want to say a few words about discipline. So discipline is about teaching, not controlling a child or their behavior. So to change a behavior, a child needs to feel safe and loved, like we talked about before. And so discipline should not hurt a child, scare a child, threaten a child, or humiliate a child. It's a teaching opportunity. And so by setting clear and consistent boundaries, we can help a child succeed. And so we're going to spend some time talking about some of those strategies. All right, so these are common positive guidance strategies that are used in early childhood, elementary, and early middle school classrooms successfully. And so the two green strategies, we're going to start with clear expectations and procedures. I'm going to talk about those in just a minute. And then the two yellow strategies, 85% of problems can be avoided using those two yellow strategies. 85%. Redirection and being in close proximity. And so we'll talk a little bit about those as well. Okay, so let's talk about teaching expectations. In the very beginning of your class, every Sunday, you need to have 2 or 3 age-appropriate classroom rules and then revisit them every week, like every week. And so you want them to be age-appropriate, so easy ones for littles might be love others and respect the things in our classroom. And then you could adapt that as children age. So 4, 5, 6 could be respect others, respect property. And when you think about Jesus' greatest commandments, to love God and love others, that covers just about any behavior, right? And so to choose classroom rules like love others and respect property or respect our things covers just about every behavior that you might possibly see. If you have a list of 10 rules, it's not going to happen. They're never going to remember it, and you're going to just be barking orders the whole time. And so in addition to setting clear expectations, you also want to have clear procedures. Kids need to know what to expect. So start every class with an attention grabber. I'll demonstrate that in just a minute. And then be sure to share the agenda for the week, for that day, so that they know what's coming. Like, what are we going to do today? What do I expect? How long is it going to last? And so I'll just give you an example. By the way, I've taught in 4, 5, 6, and I was the K-3 coordinator for a year and a half, so I've been in your shoes, know what it feels like, and so here's how I would start. Good morning, class. I am so excited to see you today. My name's Dr. Amy. This is Miss Carrie, and we're going to be your teachers today. Hey, we just have a couple of rules that we want to review with you. Hey, our rules in this class are to love everyone and to respect property. What are those rules? And then I'll have them call them back to me just to make sure that they understood. And then I'm going to say, okay, we just have a couple more procedures. Hey, if I say 1, 2, 3, eyes on me, you say... Right, if I say, holy moly, you say, right, and if I say, show me your listening, what does listening look like? Right, what does listening sound like? You got it. Hey, turn to your neighbor and give yourselves a high five. Those are awesome. Okay, so here's what we're going to do today. First, we're going to do some worship music. Then we're going to talk about Adam and Eve. Then we're going to play a game and do an art project. Ready, set? All right. And so if you can, you choose your own. In fact, we're going to create a handbook for everybody that's going to have a lot of those attention grabbers in them. But these are ones that the kids are going to know because they're super commonly used in elementary and middle school classrooms all the time. And so if you review with them what your expectations are, what the procedures are, give them a heads up about what the agenda is for the day, then you've created an environment of cooperation. Okay, so let's go back now and talk about those yellow positive guidance strategies. All right, the first one is called redirection or redirect. And so this is anytime you see an off-task behavior or something that's distracting to you, you can redirect the child to something else. You can use simple verbal redirection by saying, if you see a child running, you can say, walking feet inside, please. So basically, you're just reminding them and saying, this is what you need to be doing instead. Or if you've got a child who is distracting others or off task, give them a job. Kids love to be helpers most of the time. And so you can say, hey, I think you're a fantastic leader. Could you go get the marker basket for all of us to use? And then that child can become your junior helper for the rest of the class. So you've redirected that behavior. You can also do physical redirects. So let's say you've got 5 kids in the corner and one of them is causing a disruption. You can walk over and say, there are too many kids at this table, so let's go over here and work with Andrew on this project instead. And so it's basically giving them an alternative that's allowable and appropriate without shaming, without yelling, and really you're not even correcting. Yeah. I love that. So I'll give you a choice. You can do A or B. Which do you choose? Right? I don't want to do either. Well, then I'm going to choose for you. Gotcha. Yeah. But I'm going to stay calm because, again, I'm not taking it personal. I'm not taking it personally. It's not about me. It's about the child, right? And so it doesn't always work the first time. You might have to try 3, 4, or 5 strategies before you find one, right? But what you're showing that child is that you can't rattle me. I'm going to love you no matter what, right? I'm going to be the hands and feet and Jesus to you. I love you unconditionally, even if you're off task. Okay, the next one is something called proximity control, or being in close proximity. And so when you have children who exhibit challenging behaviors, it's important to sit or stand near those children, right? So that you prevent behaviors that you don't want to see. You can invite the child to sit next to you, right, which is a special treat normally, and then move around frequently while you're teaching. A lot of times you just want to sit in the front, but I would get up, I would move around, I would have them get up, move around a little bit so that you don't have blind spots, so that every child in that classroom knows that you're keenly aware of everything happening in the classroom at all times. So, those two, redirection and proximity control, will prevent 85% of problems, which is kind of a cool statistic if you ask me. All right, let's look at some of these others. So the next one is that you can ignore behavior. If there's something that's distracting to you and only you, is it worth stopping your activity or your lesson to call attention to it? Probably not. If it's disruptive to the entire class, then that child needs to be redirected in some way, given an option. You do want to address a distracting behavior, but let's say a child is just laying down during your lesson, right? Don't take it personally. It's fine. They can still hear you. And as long as none of the other kids are distracted by it, just ignore it. And being able to choose which behaviors are ignorable or not is an art, but if it's not a safety issue and if it's not impeding your ability to teach, I would recommend ignoring it. Make eye contact frequently. When you make eye contact with a child, then they know that you're watching them. Reteach expectations, like I talked about. Review that at the beginning of your day every single week. And then if an expectation or a classroom rule or procedure is being violated, you can say, hey, remind me what the rule about that is, and then have them parrot it back to you. Distraction works a lot like redirection. I would just remove something from a child's hand if they're using it inappropriately, and then just move them to another activity. You can always give choices, and choices empower kids. A lot of times kids feel like they have no control, right, over anything. Mom and dad tell them what to do all the time. They come to school, teacher tells them what to do all the time. They come to children's ministry, and their teacher there tells them what to do all the time. Anytime that you can give a child control, that's really empowering, and it tells them that you respect them. So like I said to Grant, you can say, hey, you can do A or B, which do you choose? But make sure that the choices that you offer are choices that you can live with, right? You can restructure the activity, and you can say, hey, you know what, guys, this isn't working. I think we need to go over to the tables and do this because sitting in the floor, it's making too much of a mess, right? You can call an audible right there in the middle of an activity, and that's okay. And sometimes you might be in the middle of an activity that's on your curriculum, and it falls apart, right? It's an epic failure, and that's okay. Just go, hey, let's move on to the next thing. Right, remember what I said in the very beginning, that connection is more important than curriculum. And so Mike says all the time, ministry moves at the speed of relationship. And so if you don't put the relationships first, then there's no learning that's going to take place anyway. So you have that freedom to drop back and punt. You have that freedom to say, hey, this isn't working, so we're going to do something else, or we're going to move on to the next thing. Model the behavior that you want to see. If you've got kids yelling, don't yell at them, because that doesn't make any sense, right? Go over and speak in a calm voice. Hey, we need to use quiet voices inside. That's really distracting, or that hurts my ears, or whatever you want to say. And this is super important. Give lead time. Hey, we've got about 3 more minutes for you to finish up that project before we move on to the next thing. If you just call it, time's up, pencils down, kids don't transition as easily as adults do, right? And so they need time to finish that last thought, finish that last drawing, and I would give them, hey, we've got 10 minutes, hey, we've got 5 minutes, hey, you've got 2 minutes left, and if you have a challenging child that needs a job, they can be the timekeeper. Be over-prepared. Spend some time during the week reviewing the curriculum. Print it out, make notes on it. Make sure that all of the materials are where you know they're going to be, right? So have them stacked up in a particular place so that you don't have to look for them during the lesson. I used to make notes right as I was getting towards the end of one activity. I would make a note, send someone for materials for A, B, and C, right? And then I would ask my helper, hey, can you run get this and this for our next activity? That keeps them busy, and then you're prepared. Downtime is your enemy. Silence is your enemy. So if kids have to wait even for a minute for the next activity to start, they're going to find a way to fill that minute, and it's usually with behaviors that you don't want. So be over-prepared. In addition to being over-prepared with your curriculum, have backup activities as well. You can go on Pinterest and type in children's ministry activities, and you can get guessing games. Would you rather is Carrie's favorite. Boards are everywhere so that you have some things in your back pocket if you're done with the curriculum, but Mike's not done preaching. Okay, I thought that was funny. And then for the littles, having transition activities really helps too. So like when you are moving from one space to another, have them crab crawl to get there. Or say, hey, everybody wearing a green shirt, line up at the door. Okay, everybody in a red shirt. So make those transitions from one place or one activity to the next fun. Okay. So now I'm going to actually ask Carrie to come up and join us, and we are going to tackle those top 10 challenges that you all have identified. Woo. Hi.
Hi.
How are you, friend?
Well, I wasn't nervous until you said, Carrie, come on up here. And then I was like, oh, I can't swallow, and I think I need to be excused.
Carrie's a superstar. So here's how this is going to work. I'm going to interview Carrie. I'm going to ask her, hey, how do you handle each individual challenge? And then I'll commentate on some of that. All right, so Carrie, what do you do when children throw things?
Well, first and foremost, you remove whatever they're throwing. I will often in my classroom say, oh, hey, we don't throw things in our classroom. I'm going to hold the bucket while you pick that up and put it away. Or I can see you're having a big emotion right now. Do we need to cuddle? Do we need to talk about it? What else can we do so that there's an option for something else? If I know that this child comes in and throws crayons every time this child comes into my classroom, then guess what? There will not be crayons out when this child comes into the classroom. So we'll remove that, and I'll actually then have another activity that I feel is more appropriate. So I have a 3-year-old who comes in. Every time they come in, they melt down. So I know to have a distraction as soon as they walk in the door. Am I going to have Play-Doh out or sand or maybe a combination of different things and ask, okay, let's say goodbye to Mom. What would you like to do today? So that there is an activity present and available.
Yeah, that's excellent, because if we just tell children no, if we just tell children stop, what happens?
Fits.
Yeah, we paralyze them. They know what they aren't allowed to do.
They
But-
don't know what they can do.
Right, and so we always pair a no with a yes. Hey, I can't allow you to throw those crayons in the room. You can give a reason why, too. That helps them learn self-regulation, right? Because it will damage the wall, or that'll hurt my friend, or whatever's most appropriate to the scenario. However, would you like to do this or this? I might even go as far as to say, hey, when we're on the playground later, you can throw balls all you want, because it's okay to throw balls outside, but we can't throw crayons in the room.
Or I actually will get the bean bags out and say, here's the target. You can throw things with the bean bags into the shark mouth.
Yeah.
They like that one.
Right. So it takes a little bit of extra effort to go beyond that no, right? Because you got to be creative, you got to think of the alternatives, but it will pay off in the end, right?
Agreed.
Okay. Number 2, what do you do when children fight?
So that's an immediate intervention, and I will physically intervene. So usually I can tell who the aggressor is because I've been paying attention, and I will go and hug that child. Oh, I can see we're very upset right now. We don't ever hurt friends. In our classroom, we love one another, and loving each other means we don't ever use our hands when we're angry. Hopefully I have a second person who can then take the other child, and we're going to split them. But then I'm going to get on their level. I'm going to be on my knees or sitting on the floor. We're going to hold hands. We're going to talk about what happened here. Help me understand why you were throwing a round house hook to your, what was going on? Are we frustrated? Are we angry? Are you hungry? And I don't usually ask that many questions because then they're like, I don't know.
Right.
But I do want to engage. So I want to acknowledge that they're upset and frustrated, right? So I'm going to validate some feelings. I'm going to restate the classroom rules. We love one another, so we don't ever hit. We don't hurt. We use our words. And then we're going to have a conversation when they've calmed down and they're ready to have that conversation. So you were frustrated because, well, she took my crayon. He colored on my picture. I want a donut. And then we're going to problem solve. How do we get that need met? What could you do next time? Instead of hitting, what could you do next time? I'm going to come tell you, Miss Carrie, they colored on my picture. Fantastic. And I will pay attention that they've been coloring on your stuff.
So then you know that you've got a child who is instigating some aggressive behaviors. How does that change what you do around that child.
So then that child is usually glued to my hip. So if I know that every time this child comes in, they're going to be looking for, and sometimes I have kids like that. They come in the morning, and I know the moment they step in the classroom, oh, we didn't have a good morning. And they're looking, they're scanning the room for where can I vent this big emotion that I'm feeling. And so then that child becomes my BFF, and they're going to stay with me all day. I will ask them to do jobs for me. I will constantly engage because I want them to know I'm paying attention. I see you and I'm paying attention. And the behavior that's not appropriate will not be allowed. I disagree with that.
So what happens with the child who was punched?
Well, again, hopefully I have a second who can be comforting that child. I will, when the situation has resolved, when we have come to everyone's calmed back down, I will often bring my preschoolers back together. So tell so-and-so how that felt when they punched you. Oh, that hurt my face, it hurt my feelings, I didn't like it. Can we now say we're sorry? I'm sorry I punched you, I was angry. And I know that sounds really silly, but I'm gonna walk them all the way through that conversation to the best of their age-appropriate ability. So some kids are never gonna say sorry, and that's okay. I'm going to say sorry for them. I know Jack isn't saying sorry right now, but he really is sorry. He's your friend. And we're going to elbow it out, or we're going to fist bump it out, or we're going to high five it out. And then we're going to have some resolution so that both childs feel seen and heard, and there's been some coming back together.
So what's happening with the rest of the class right now?
Well, then generally I have them engaged in another activity. So everybody go get some work and let's go sit at the table. I'll be right with you while I resolve this. And again, hopefully there's a second person in the classroom to be managing what's happening while you're addressing that one situation. And I'm here on Sundays to help with that. I will come in and do whatever you need.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the teacher is the one who handles the aggressive behavior while the helper continues with the activity. So don't have your teenage helper deal with the problem, right? That's not fair to them. And they're not as equipped. And so say, hey, can you take over this activity right now so that I can handle this?
And those being able to be in that situation, that's relationship building. Because then that child knows when something's happening that you're going to step in and help, and that you're their go-to. You're the safety net for them. So if there's something scary that's happening, or today we had tons of candy because it was Pinata Have Some Candy Day in our classroom. Some of the boys were starting to get into each other's cups. I just went and sat by them at their table. I didn't say anything, I didn't have to. I just went and sat by their table, and the behavior stopped immediately.
Proximity control.
Because he knew I shouldn't be putting my hands on the littler boys' cups, and the littler boys were like, I don't know what to do with this big kid. So I just went and sat. And that simply being present, the little boys went, oh, Miss Carey's here. And the older boys went, I'm not supposed to take his candy. And that was done.
Yeah. Okay. How do you handle toddlers who cry the whole time during church?
So I won't sing the song to you, but I have moms and dads come back. It's true, grown-ups.
Sing the song, sing the song.
No, it's being it's being recorded. I will remind them over and over and over again. And I have to remember, and that's a hard one for me, because a crying child that I can't soothe hurts my heart. But I have to remember it's age appropriate for a toddler to cry. This is an attachment lesson that they're learning. For some of them, they are with mom and dad all week long. This is the hour and a half that they are separated once a week, and it's rotating adults. So the difference in my preschool classroom during the week is they're with me all the time. So within a week's time, the crying stops because they're excited to come hang out because I'm going to do something crazy, and they want to be present.
They trust her because she's created a safe emotional space for them.
Correct. And I like to be super animated in class, so they really want to know, what is Miss Carey doing this week? With a toddler, it is really just about reminding them over and over and over, it's okay to cry, it's okay to be afraid. Moms and dads come back, you are safe, and they will come back. And they may cry that entire hour and a half, and my job is to simply stay calm, which is why I sing. Because it calms me down. and to just be that place where they go, okay, once a week I'm going to go sit with this crazy lady who's going to sing to me, and it's going to be okay for me to cry, and at the end of all of it, mom and dad come back and I get a donut.
Yeah, but not during class.
Not during class.
Yes, which we'll talk about here in a minute.
Yeah.
Okay, so how do you handle distracting behaviors? You know, that kid who's always disrupting.
So usually, especially in our class, those are the kids who really like the attention. And so I will have them participate in whatever my lesson plan is. So if I have a child who's laying on the floor and he's just drumming his feet and it's got everybody going, or somebody's throwing crayons, or somebody is constantly running around the room or drawing on a whiteboard, then I'm going to take that distractive behavior and I'm going to use it to my advantage. I'm a little manipulative that way. So if they're going to be drawing on the whiteboard, I'm going to ask them to draw the words I'm saying, or to draw pictures to go along with what I'm teaching. If they're drumming on the floor with their feet, then I may ask them to come up and help me reenact the scene that we're reading from the book or the Bible lesson. I will ask them to participate in a way that redirects that energy, that still helps them to get the attention that they're obviously wanting or seeking, but they're going to do it in a way that feels better than Miss Carrie constantly glaring or telling them to stop. Because that, again, is feeding that need for attention, but not in a positive way, so they're not actually getting filled up. They don't feel better, so the behavior's not going to stop.
Yeah, and so I think that kind of piggybacks on when you wait for every child to cut, sorry, I hit it.
There you go.
Hello? Okay. If you wait for every child to be sitting in front of you completely quiet before you start your lesson, it'll never happen. It'll never happen. You'll spend the whole class waiting for everyone to come sit right in front of you and be quiet. Start teaching. If you are exciting enough, entertaining enough, animated enough, they will come. And there will be that one child who's still laying down at the back of the crowd in the circle. Can they still hear you if they're laying down? They're still absorbing what you're saying. And so by calling them out, sit up, Andrew, then you're robbing the rest of the group from the opportunity to move forward with the lesson. Let it go. This is one of those where we have to check our egos at the door, right? Because we expect perfection. They're not listening to me. Yeah, they might not be. They're still getting over the Sunday morning meltdown in the car with Jeff cursing at them.
Jeff.
I know, right? I love it when he's absent, because then I can talk about him. Our kids are all adults now. It doesn't happen anymore. Okay.
I disagree with that.
Evan's fallen out of his chair back there.
I've been in the car with that.
Okay. What do you do when kids come in with a donut? What are we going to do now?
The donut.
From now
so
on.
I think
Simple solution where we just don't have donuts.
we did talk about not having donuts, but we are going to implement no donuts or no food in the classroom. So they need to finish those and wash their hands before they come in, because today half of them came in with donuts and then they all wanted water. So then it's a constant distraction of someone needing to lead them out to get the water, and then of course they all have to go to the bathroom, because that's what water and donuts leads to. So I think our new rule of play moving forward is there's no food in the classroom. You finish your donut outside or you have a donut afterwards. I'll tell you that my almost 10-year-old will grab a donut, wrap it up, and stick it in my purse, and I better remember it's there because Monday morning my purse is sticky and gross. But that's my, as a parent, I don't want her amped up on sugar before going into class. Now, I can't control other parents and whether or not they give them donuts, but we are from here on out moving forward going to say there's no food in the classroom anymore.
Yeah, and I mean, until we train everyone to not, that sounds beautiful, doesn't it? Until we train everyone not to bring a donut in, we can just put it on top of the cabinet or something, write their initial on the napkin and they can have it on their way out. But just like we're going to be creating a teacher handbook for you all, we're also going to be creating a short parent handbook about children's ministry as well. And so that policy will be in that handbook so that they'll know, hey, we're not going to have food in the class. Y'all, it's 75 minutes. They can go 75 minutes without eating. Yeah. Okay. So in 4, 5, 6, they have kids who, you mentioned a whiteboard, but we were talking about youngers. They have kids who are writing on the whiteboard during the lesson. Should we just let them write on the whiteboard during the lesson, or what would you suggest?
So this is 4, 5, 6. We're a little bit older, so we can follow some rules and boundaries, and I would simply put the whiteboard markers away. They just wouldn't be out and available to them. If I have somebody that I feel like they need to move, so some kids can't sit, that's not how they learn, they're kinetic learners, they need to move their bodies, then I'm going to give them, hey, while I'm talking on the whiteboard, I'd like you to do it. But if that becomes a distraction, then we're going to have to stop. So I need you to help me make sure that you're not calling your friends up to come. This is your special thing. You may, while I am teaching, write the Bible verse on the whiteboard or draw a picture that you think goes along with what we're learning. And then we're going to put those markers away and you're going to come and be present.
That's a great idea.
I'm the master of
You
those.
are. You're a superstar. How do you handle it when a kid is disrespectful to a teacher?
So that would, again, be calling back to, in this classroom, we love each other. So we use loving, kind words. We use loving, kind hands. And we use loving, kind behaviors. When you use words like that, are those words loving? And I'm going to ask them, is that being loving? Are we being loving right now with our words? Would you like it if somebody else said ABC to you? Does that feel good in your heart? I know your heart better than that. So that behavior isn't going to be okay. I need you to sit and think about those words.
Yeah, my favorite is you can be mad, but you can't be mean.
Correct.
Yeah,
I say that a lot, actually, to the 3, 4, 5-year-olds. You can be mad, you can't be mean.
can't be mean. Okay. So what do you do for kids with special needs?
So every special needs child is different, and it really is going to be about, this is where building those relationships, not just with the child, but with their parents, is going to be uber important, because every special needs child is different. There are some who, if they're acting out and I go up and put my arm around them, that's receptive. That's a little bit of just me being in their space and bringing that calming energy to calm the situation. But some kids with special needs do not touch them. They don't react well to it. So I have to know that child, and I have to know what are the things that I can bring to the equation that bring calm and peace. And that sometimes I'll go to a parent and say, so I've noticed that so-and-so just sits in the corner rocking and crying. What do you do at home when you see that behavior? What can I bring from home into the classroom that will then feel like we are a team together for this child? And then they know, oh, hey, they know. They know my favorite thing is when I'm really having a moment, I want my jacket wrapped around me with my hood up. Or I just need a pen and paper and I'm going to sit and doodle in the corner. Again, it's about having that relationship.
Right. So one of the things I noticed until we got to that question, when I posed or I asked you for the solutions to all of these other challenging behaviors, you never said, well, I'm going to go tell the parent, or I'm going to go get the parent. What was your thinking behind that?
So I have been in classroom situations where you come to pick up your child and it is a laundry list of what they did wrong. Oh, they had to be in the blue chair for 5 minutes for this, and they did this, and then they were that. And then what does the parent feel? They feel ashamed, they feel guilty, they wonder, can I bring my child back here? Is this really going to be appropriate for them and for us as a family? And the child feels the same way. And the child also knows that I'm not in control because I have to tell mom and dad, so I make sure that they get punished on the way home. If it happens in my classroom and it does not involve blood, broken bones, or major injury to somebody else, I handle it in my classroom because I am in control. So the only time I'm going to get a parent or involve a parent is if it is a major incident that I have to write an incident report for. So somebody picks up something, they swing it at a kid, the kid has an open, that's obviously going to be a conversation with a parent. But if I'm having challenging behaviors in the classroom, unless they are repetitive and I need some insight from mom and dad, I'm going to handle it in the classroom. Because again, I want the child to know they are safe with me and I've got it in control. And I want the parent to know, I love your child right where they are, and I don't need you to parent while they're here. I got this. I got this. It is 90 minutes. I can do anything with anyone for 90 minutes.
Yeah. And I think that kind of leads into the idea that children's ministry is not just a ministry for the children, it's a ministry for the parents as well. That 90 minutes might be the only break that those parents get the entire week. And so that's a gift that we can give to those families to give them that break for 90 minutes. So, like, I'm a professionally trained educator, and I sometimes break a sweat with a group of kids. It happens, right? Like, it's hard work, but I can do anything for 90 minutes. And I think what Carrie's saying is there's some times where you need to partner with the parents to say, hey, I'm really struggling with this week after week. I'm wondering, what do you do at home when that happens so we can do it here? That's very different than, that's showing that you are in control and want to solve the problem, as opposed to saying, I can't handle this, you have to come handle your kid. So there is a huge difference.
Well, again, it's about being in partnership. So I want to be in partnership because I want to be in relationship. And we can't be in relationship if I'm making you feel like your child is a problem. They're children, not problems. It's a challenge. So how do I work with the parent or with my co-classroom manager to resolve that problem to the benefit of the child? Which does mean surrendering ego, because it may mean that so-and-so needs to roll around on the floor the entire time I'm talking, which can feel disruptive for me, but if it's not disrupting the class and it's meeting that child's need to have movement, then I need to surrender to that.
So what are the specific times where what do you need to write an incident report for?
Again, so if there's been an injury or a major traumatic incident, so if a child falls, if there's been a huge fight and they've actually marked each other, if it's a minor scuffle, I'm not going to write an incident report for that. But if there's a major tussle, then I need to let both parties know. Because again, children are great tellers of information, especially when you don't want them to. Right? My 9-year-old will walk into a room and tell the truth on me at the drop of a hat. And I'm like, you do not have to tell people that I forgot to put on my deodorant this morning. They don't need to know. But she will tell you. So if it's a big thing that I know that child is going to take home and talk to mom and dad about, I want to give them a heads up. Hey, this morning in class we had an incident. I just want to let you know. It's no big deal. I handled it. Nobody's in trouble. But it did happen. Again, if it's not involving a major something, I'm not writing an incident report over it.
Okay. I love this visual on 5 things to remember when working with challenging behaviors. 1, don't take it personally. Remember, it's not about you. There's stuff going on in the iceberg that you can't see. 2, Carrie just alluded to this, the behaviors are challenging, the child isn't. De-escalate first and then problem solve later. Remember, in the middle of a fire, that child can't reason. So help them regulate their emotions, calm down, and then talk it through. Sometimes we might not see it, but there's always a reason. Again, that iceberg, what's under the water. And then have empathy. If you're struggling with the child's behavior, the child is struggling, and the behavior is the signal. It's the fever. It's the warning sign that there's something happening.
I think sometimes we have this expectation that children should be perfect all the time. They're not allowed to have bad days. They're not allowed to be moody. They're not allowed to not want to do something. And we get angry or frustrated when those behaviors come up. Kids have bad days just like us. They wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Things go wrong for them. They had a horrible week at school. And we will see challenging behaviors that have nothing to do with us and everything to do with them just trying to process something that's going on. So I think that empathy is kind of a key.
Yeah. So we want to open it up to you all now and ask questions about anything we talked about or things that we didn't talk about that you still have questions. Do you?
Want me to take the mic down?
Yeah.